When you're born really close to Christmas, Christmas kind of obliterates your birthday. And you get what's called, what I call birthmas instead. And birthmas works like this. On your birthday, your friends come over and you have a party and you get mandarin oranges, socks, and belts, and crap like that. And, and then when Christmas comes, you get the real present, the single real present, and more crap. And so being born so close to Christmas starts you off hating Christmas, gets you on the Grinch track right away, and that's what happened to me. And I felt kind of ripped off. And that's the way it was until I was about 12 when I discovered that birthmas was better than nothing at all because my mother had had a stroke, and so everything got canceled. And then she had another stroke and was paralyzed from the waist down. And she developed early onset dementia. Merry Christmas. And she became kind of nasty. And Christmas became for me a real working day, and because I would have to put up all the Christmas lights and get the tree and decorate the tree. I'm trying to remember everything. I'd have to get out the Christmas spode, the crystal, polish all the silver, do everything, and then do all the shopping. And Dad would bathe Mom and wash her hair and get her dressed up and get rid of all the medical equipment in the bedrooms and act as host when a few people would come by. And then I would come up and do her hair because Christmas is a time for cliches. Do that again. And then I'd have to cook like this full-on meal and schlep it upstairs and serve it, and then take it all down and put it up, and I'd go to bed absolutely exhausted, and that's the way Christmas was until 1966. And then 1966 was going to be my 16th birthmas. But by then, Mother was living in, what Dad called it a sanatorium. I called it the Halloween Hotel because it was an empathetic, dear little kid. But everybody in it looked like they stepped right out of Nightmare. And it was kind of like going to a circus sideshow, but it was in a clinical setting. And if you saw things you didn't want to see and hear things you didn't want to hear, and you would smell things, well, you get the idea. And but just before, for my birthday, I got a car, a 1958 used Volkswagen. I put racing stripes on it and got a ticket on my very first day. But I felt pretty good. I was 16, I had my own car, but it came with strings and actually ribbons. And for Christmas, I had to recreate everything that we'd had at home in Mom's room at the Halloween Hotel. The whole thing, the spode, and the condiments, and we had to keep it warm. And we lived in West Van, had to schlep it over to North Van and everything. And Christmas kept getting worse and worse and worse. And at the Halloween Hotel, Mom had a roommate, and on the first Christmas that we had together there, while we ate dinner, Gordon had an argument with people we couldn't see, and it put a kind of a pall on Christmas. And there's nothing like, lukewarm turkey and somebody screaming about things. But because my mother wasn't, really sick, she lived a fairly long time, so we went through quite a few roommates. There were screamers and sleepers and throwers and pukers. There were all kinds. But my favorite was Maylene, and when Maylene came, she was 86 years old, and all she wanted to do was to be left alone and to fold pieces of Kleenex and tissue paper into tiny little squares, and she'd make long lines of rows on the bedding on her bed and put these little folded pieces of paper in the folds on her bed, and that's all she wanted to do. And she would rock back and forth and mumble these kinds of sounds in her own world, and that's all she wanted to do. But because she had no visitors, she had to steal the Kleenex and the toilet paper from the bathrooms and from the custodial carts and hoard them in her bed and in her drawers and everything. And that would create problems. And some of the staff didn't like that, and they'd take everything away. Maylene would go into a really messy, noisy fit. So they'd tie her down at her wrists and her ankles. And she couldn't communicate, but she would just exacerbate everything because she was restrained. So on the first Christmas where we had with Maylene, when I arrived with the spode, Maylene was full sprawl and screaming and foaming, and I thought, this is not Christmas. This cannot happen. So I untied her and went down to the bathroom and got a roll of toilet paper and bonne fête, Maylene. And Nurse Ratchet read the riot act and told me that I was actually it's actually assault because I had touched Maylene, and so to back off. But she didn't reattach Maylene, so I served her some of our Christmas dinner. And when I got close to her, which I rarely was, she was mumbling away, and I thought I recognized some sounds. And I looked on the bed, and whereas I looked at the papers often, I'd never seen the pattern, and these lights went off. So I ran down to the chapel down on the floor down below and found what I wanted and came back up. And when I gave her the chapel rosary, she took it from my hands and just started rubbing it. And she looked right at me, first time. Looked right in my eyes and held my eyes, and then put the rosary down, rubbed it on her face a little bit, put it on the bed, swung her legs around and sat on the edge of the bed. And then took the spode and put it on her lap and started eating. Smiled at my mother and started eating. She didn't communicate with us, but she was with us, like I'd never seen before. And that day, when I put everything up, heading back home, it was the very first time that I ever felt anything close to kind of the Christmas spirit, because I'd given a stranger something to eat that I'd made, and I'd given her easier access to her God on Christmas Day. And for the rest of her life, forever after, that rosary brought her contentment right till her last days. But the best part was at Halloween Hotel, they were never out of Kleenex and toilet paper forever and ever. Amen. Merry Christmas.
Loranger!